In Yemen, Israeli air attack on Sana'a airport where the head of the World Health Organization was about to embark. Russian President Vladimir Putin highlighted the cooperation with his partners of the Eurasian Economic Union in the framework of the bloc summit taking place in St. Petersburg. And the Haitian government faces a new crisis as floods have ravaged the countryside in what constitutes one of the worst natural disasters recorded in the Caribbean nation's history. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with news. In Yemen, an Israeli air attack on Sana'a airport, where the head of the World Health Organization was about to embark, took place. The senior official of the World Health Organization reported that the attack killed 2 people and wounded 1 inside the airport. In this regard, he pointed out that the air traffic control tower at the departure lounge and the runway were damaged. Meanwhile, on the same day, Israeli bombings were reported against 2 power plants, oil installations in northern Yemen. The Israeli troops killed 5 Palestinian journalists early Thursday morning at the Al-Auda hospital located in the Nusayrat refugee camp. Faisal Abu Kimsan, Auman Al-Jadi, Ibrahim Sej Ali, Fadi Hassuna, and Muhammad Al-Lada were journalists of the Al-Quds television channel, from where the massacre was confirmed. According to the Palestinian media, the mobile unit was hit while the reporters were carrying out informative work. The attack has caused damage to the hospital, and one of his doctors was seriously wounded in the midst of the heavy explosion. The genocidal troops once again justified these war crimes by linking the victims to the Palestinian resistance. After the massacre carried out by Israeli genocidal forces that deliberately targeted and killed 5 journalists working outside the Al-Auda hospital, we contact our colleague Huda Hegazi with all the information from the ground.
Nuevamente, el ejército de Israel ha cometido otra
Once
masacre.
again, the Israeli army has committed another atrocious massacre, but this time not against the civilian population, but against the journalists, the workers of the media. This morning, at 1:30, the occupation army bombed the civilian bus belonging to the Palestinian Al-Quds channel. Inside, there were at least 5 journalists, as well as cameras and various media materials. As we can see, the vehicle has been completely destroyed. The attack even occurred directly targeting them. This bus was parked in front of Al-Auda Hospital, which is the only hospital that is active in Al-Nusrat's central government. As we can see, there is literally no trace of the car. These 5 journalists have been completely burned. There is not even a trace of them. We can say that right now, the occupation army has sent a clear message, and that is that there are no red lines. It has attacked these journalists directly and intentionally, increasing the number of journalists killed to 201 during this genocidal Israeli war. And as we can see, the Israeli army has no red lines. Even when this car was parked in front of this hospital, it was directly bombed by the Israeli army. Now we will speak with our colleague Mahmoud Allo, who was here in this hospital at the time of the incident, so that he can tell us exactly what happened.
As usual, during the journalistic work at this point, we have at the Al-Auda hospital a point of journalistic coverage.
At around 1:30 a.m., the Israeli occupation forces shelled the hospital and we woke up to the sound of a loud explosion. We saw the fire burning through the vehicle, and inside were 5 journalists who worked for the Al-Quds TV network. We were surprised to see the bodies completely burned and charred. We were unable to save them or get them out of the car, until the firemen arrived and put out the fire. The scene was frightening. And the Israeli army knows very well this was a journalist vehicle, that is very easy to set apart for its press banners. Inside were cameras and material and everything has been destroyed. This is not the first massacre. Last week the army murdered our comrade Ahmad al-Lul. And before that, other 196 journalists. We are now talking about more than 200 dead journalists, and a large number of journalists have also been wounded at this war for the mere fact of working in Gaza.
What is your message in the face of this continuous attack against the press?
Our message is clear. And it's directed at the international community and all the human rights organizations on the necessity of pressuring Israel to stop this war on the Gaza Strip that is targeting civilians, children as well as journalists. And the need to protect the Palestinian journalists. We have no weapons, we only have this helmet that has been burnt by the Israeli actions. We ask for protection for the journalists and sanctions to Israel for their war crimes.
As our colleague has just assured us, the Israeli regime was perfectly aware that in this vehicle there were journalists. They also knew that it was being used for the journalist work, and it still targeted it directly in the first hours of the morning. Also, as our comrade has assured us, the images were dreadful. The victims were completely burnt due to the fire set off by the bombing, and, therefore, the message, after over 14 months, is that the Israeli regime is deliberately attacking journalists. They do not want us to continue doing our job. And that is why the message today from all Gazan journalists is that we will continue doing our job. We will continue with our work of transmitting to the world, and what we ask for is international protection. We are just doing our job, and we want to do it safely, with a sense of security that we sadly do not have. And our fear is that at any given moment we could be the next ones murdered by the Israeli army.
The Lebanese army denounced the violation by Israel on the ceasefire agreement in force since November 27th. This way, Lebanon's armed forces, which is monitoring the ceasefire implementation in coordination with the United Nations Interim Force, UNIFIL, condemned the destruction of villages and towns in the south of the country in violation of the nation's sovereignty. In this context, authorities have increased their alerts at several checkpoints due to the presence of Israeli military units in the surrounding areas. Precisely in the capital, Beirut, several border crossings with Israel were closed after multiple attacks by the Tel Aviv regime. Resistance forces of the ousted Syrian government mounted an overnight operation annihilating over 10 security personnel of the terrorist administration in the western governorate of Tartus. The terrorist Hayat Tahrir al-Sham FTS coalition has toppled all Bashar al-Assad's cabinet. Resistance forces mounted an overnight raid, killing 14 security personnel of the Interior Ministry. The appointed minister Mohammed Abdul Raham confirmed so, adding that others 10 FTS officials had been injured. Moreover, clashes bursted out when the extremist regime tried to perform arbitrary, unreasonable searches and seizures of houses. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Russian President Vladimir Putin stressed the mutually beneficial, multifaceted cooperation with his partners of the Eurasian Economic Union in the framework of the Bloc Summit taking place in St. Petersburg on Thursday. During the gathering, where member countries presented the results of the year 2024, the Russian leader expressed his interest in intensifying the joint work of the nations to strengthen their partnership globally. In addition, the leaders discussed the construction of regional integration and address cooperation in various fields. In this context, President Putin noted the development of the alliance, which was formed as one of the independent and self-sufficient centers of the multipolar world. On Thursday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held a press conference with national and international journalists covering key aspects of the international scene. Regarding the conflict with Ukraine, the Russian diplomat stated that achieving definitive legal agreements that guarantee the security of Russia and its neighbor countries is key. Lavrov also stressed the need for Syria to remain an independent country and stated that Israel should refrain from solving its geopolitical problems at the expense of the war-torn country. Regarding Latin America and the Caribbean, the minister assured that Russian relations with the region are based in mutual respect and cooperation. He also stated that Western powers need to overcome their loss of power in the transition to a multipolar world.
So a multipolar world definitely would take for granted that the Western colleagues also participate without a doubt. But how can they position themselves, whether they will get through that psychological loss of domination that they enjoyed for half a century? All of that depends on their political culture and their real sound understanding of their place in this real life and their ability to act accordingly in accordance to their new.
In this context, the Russian foreign minister also highlighted the relevance of the BRICS bloc in this new world scene.
The popularity of BRICS is immense and enormous. Delegation of 35 nations attended the BRICS summit in Kazan, and 6 multilateral international organizations attended, including the UN Secretary General, and that speaks of a high cloud of BRICS and that the fact that the interest to pursue a rapprochement with BRICS by another international entity.
The president of Panama, José Raúl Mulino, assured that Chinese military is not interfering in the Panama Canal. The statements of the Panamanian leader responded to the allegations of the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump on the alleged presence of Chinese military personnel in the Central American country. Likewise, Mulino ratified his administration's will to foster all foreign investments, no matter the nationality. The president also reaffirmed his country's sovereignty, underscoring that no foreign company has the authority to make decisions regarding the canal.
There is absolutely no Chinese interference or participation in anything related to the Panama Canal.
We have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final show break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Haitian government faces a new crisis as floods have ravaged the countryside in what constitutes one of the worst natural disasters recorded in the Caribbean nation's history. In turn, in the past 72 hours, civil protection authorities confirmed 13 deaths, 15 injured, and 1 missing. Steady rainfalls are especially hitting the northern region, where farmers' bastions of rural economy have lost almost all their crops, while irrigation systems are practically inoperable. In addition, official reports inform that over 500 houses have been fully destroyed and 16,515 have been flooded. In this context, authorities have yet to provide figures for the material damages in the also affected North, Northwest, Grandians and Nips region. In Ecuador, the relatives of the 4 miners who disappeared in a forced manner in Guayaquil came to provide data for a forensic comparison. The finding of 4 corpses in the area of Taura in the province of Guayas has required the families to provide data to carry out anthropological examinations. These bodies were found in the same area where the children were illegally transferred by military personnel in an operation that was part of President Daniel Noboa's plan to combat crime. The Ecuadorian government is being strongly questioned for trying to hide the operation and for repeated human rights violations.
This is precisely one of the investigative techniques that the prosecutor's office must use to locate them, in addition to facilitating the identification of the individuals from the given hints. Afterwards, experts will take radiographic samples and they'll perform the legal medical autopsy, which corresponds to the type of death these victims had. However, we cannot confirm yet that these remains belong to the 4 miners, since experts are still examining, so they have to look at age, ethnicity and other traits provided in the anthropological interview.
In this context, the executive director of the non-governmental organization Human Rights of Guayaquil, Billy Navarrete, described as serious Noboa's governmental actions ranging from the cover-up of the forced disappearances to intimidating the families of the missing miners.
Here, some representatives of the state abducted the children, they mistreated them, and finally they enforced their disappearance. These are offenses condemned by all the Ecuadorian jurisprudence and the international law as serious human rights violations, and the most severe form of torture, not only for victims, but also for their families, as they suffer every day from hoping to see their loved ones come back alive. In addition, in this case there is a particular situation that strongly points to a forced disappearance, which always entails the cover-up by official institutions of those perpetrating the crime. For instance, while we were on a session at the public prosecutor's office, a patrol of the national police pulled over in front of the house of one of the victims' families, and they took photos of the house's exterior, and of the vehicle, in which they commute to work. These are intimidating, inappropriate actions that have no place here.
In Argentina, during the year of Javier Milei's presidency, only 14 sentences were handed down in crimes against humanity, the lowest number in the last 10 years. Federal prosecutor Maria Ángeles Ramos, in charge of the report, stated that since 2006, when the trials for crimes against humanity were reactivated, 1,195 perpetrators have been convicted. The trials aim to hold military officials accountable for their participation in the disappearance and torture of civilians during the country's last civic military dictatorship. However, in 2025, only 20 people were convicted and 12 were acquitted. Experts point out that the low production of sentences coincides with the coming to power of a government that denies and justifies the crimes of the dictatorship. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.